I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Jason Light. What is it like to be a general manager in a draft where you do not have to take a quarterback? You're not even thinking about it. You don't have to think about it. What is that like in this day and age, Brandon?
Relief. That's what it's like. It's, you got to have one. Everyone knows that's why you see teams be as aggressive, just the way we were in 2018 when we knew, when Sean and I got here, we were both on the same accord. We have to, this franchise had been 17 years without, any postseason appearances and really had not had much success at all to the level, of competing for a championship since Jim Kelly and that crew was out of here. So the first thing you look at is, lack of stability at the quarterback position, which, also was lack of stability, in front office, head coaches. And if we're going to make this thing and turn it around here in Buffalo and not be putting our house up for sale in 2 or 3 or 4 years, we better find a franchise quarterback. And fortunately, we were able to do that. So to have a guy like Josh, it's relief to not have to be in the quarterback business, in free agency or the draft.
When did you know he was your guy back in that day, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, even just watching his film at Wyoming, there was just something about, I don't know what it is. It truly, Rich, this is crazy, but it's almost like a godlike feeling. Like, man, something is just attracting you to this guy. And something about his film, it was just so exciting. And sometimes it was exciting plays that were incomplete passes that he got out of someone that had him, in a headlock almost trying to sack him. And he got out of it and didn't even complete the ball. And that was, it was just, his tape was, and I think this, even as a young pro, as he was ascending, I'm like, when Josh Allen walks out of the huddle, something exciting is going to happen. It may be for the other team, but he's just an exciting player to watch. And so that attracted me, and our staff to him. And then once you got to meet him and you just saw his intelligence and his leadership and all the intangibles that the best quarterbacks that we've seen in our lifetimes have, just felt all that. And, watching him grow here. But early on, I mean, that first win we had, we were 18-point underdogs at Minnesota, his second start in 2018. And that was the leap over Anthony Barr. And it was just like, holy cow, that was awesome. Don't ever do that again. And of course, he doesn't listen. He still leaps people sometimes. But I don't know. I mean, it's just, I can still remember a lot of the plays of his Wyoming film, even though that's been, back since his 2017 season.
So you can remember the cut-ups that led you to, which is that's
yeah. We had Rich, we had a 17-hour meeting one day that we started at 8 a.m. and we finished at 1 a.m. with the Pagulas, Brian Dable, Sean McDermott, Joe Shane, and myself. And we sat in there and we're, because you want ownership to be behind this. And we went through all these quarterbacks of this draft. And we literally watched every play that these guys were involved in, run or pass, and we had already seen them 100 times, but just to kind of go through ownership and how I had it stacked. And we listened to points of views that people had. And that was probably a couple weeks before the draft. And at that point, it was like, how are we going to get our hands on this guy? Because we'd made the playoffs the year before and we were at 21 and 22. We went from 21 to 12. So at that point, we were sitting at 12. How do we get all the way up to the top 2 or 3 if we're going to land Josh? And fortunately, he was still there, and we were able to move to 7 and get him.
Is that why Josh wears number 17, Brandon? Because that's the number of hours you're meeting with?
That is funny. I didn't even think about that.
I mean, hey, listen.
I've had that meeting in my head for years, and that's my dumb self never putting that 2 and 2 together.
No.
You in 10 seconds put it together.
Well, no, my coordinating producer, Mike Hoskins, who's a diehard member of Bill's Mafia, just got in my ear, so I'll give him credit for that sort of. Even though there's an I in Rich and Eisen, we're a team here on the
Good
Rich
work,
Eisen
Mike.
Show.
Appreciate that.
You made his day. Call him out. Actually, you have no idea. Why do you think while you're talking about Josh Allen, like he had 15 photographs ready to put up on the screen, like literally?
I love it. I love it. There was a good one.
Could be from his personal collection. But like, were you concerned that the Browns or Jets might take him off the board? Like, were you having white knuckles in that draft?
Yeah, I was very concerned. You know, you're always trying to read signals and ask people that you think may be in the know. And you know, I'm pretty sure. I mean, you know, John Dorsey was the GM, and Dorsey was a great GM, and still he's done a heck of a job at helping Brad Holmes and that team in Detroit. And I'm pretty sure they were down to Josh or Baker. And so I was very nervous that he would get selected there. And we felt like that, you know, Dave Gettleman and I worked together. I felt, you know, strongly that he was going with Saquon. The Jets, we had heard, you know, were more in the Darnold camp, you know, than Josh. So at that point, it was like, where can we get to? And maybe it's not a team, you know, right past them that's going to take a quarterback, but I was always also worried about teams, you know, beating us to the punch and trading in front of us, you know, to steal them. So we were trying, you know, even at 4, Dorsey had another pick. He stayed there and took Ward. I had a deal with Elway at 5, but Elway said, you know, there's one player we like. It was Bradley Chubb. And so we finally, you know, speaking of Jason Light, you know, I'll always appreciate the deal that Jason and I were, you know, was able to do. They had a quarterback at the time and they weren't in the market. And fortunately, you know, we made the deal with him.
Man. And then just so much discussion these days about, you know, the makeup of a quarterback. And I mean, I remember, what was it, accuracy issues that was the knock? That was the red flag on him?
Yeah.
It was inaccurate?
It was accuracy, Rich. And I think the biggest thing that we, you know, it was 2 things. One, you know, Josh played all sports in high school. He was not this, you know, quarterback savant that we hear guys coming out of middle school these days. This guy's going to be the next whatever. Josh, you know, grew up on a cantaloupe farm, like just played all sports, never really just played football. He goes to junior college. He's got an email his way. He sends out a bunch of, you know, letters to all these Division I coaches. Craig Bowl takes him at Wyoming. And so we felt like he was a raw piece of clay that had limited coaching from, you know, just your base, your footwork, you know, your arm angle, release point, all that stuff. But then separately, we felt like some of the stats didn't back up the accuracy thing. So we kind of tabulated our own accuracy for each quarterback. If the ball should have been caught, we gave him a catch. And if it was, if it was an interception that was tipped, we tried to create our own stats for each quarterback in that class just to make it more comparable. And when we did that, we felt his accuracy percentage was closer. Not going to say he was up top. He still had work to do. But when you put his DNA and just being a kind of a raw piece of clay, we felt this guy had a lot of potential to turn into what he's become.
Well, I can confirm it worked. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.